Some years ago, I wrote articles explaining that if one has a jinn spirit entity, it does not mean the jinn can make that person rich. Even after this article, people continued to ask me about stories they heard about jinn's spirit and such entities making people rich and bring them fame and whatnot. So, the question is there any way at all a jinn and such entities bring one fame, fortune, and luck? In today's article, I will speak of few ways people can use jinn to get what they want. Now, understand these methods I will speak about are rare, and some are very ill-natured. One must realize that simply by having a jinn in your keep does not mean you can have fame, success, and wealth, but there are ways one can get such things at time by extreme measures, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. Another thing I would like to mention before I start speaking of the ways people may have utilized entities to get what they want is that these methods consist of rituals, where certain entities are called forth, conjured. This does not apply to entities that are bound to an object. These entities that are called forth are powerful entities, some being kings. Such entities cannot be bound to an object, and one must have the proper knowledge on how to contact these entities, and having such knowledge is extremely rare because it is very old magic. Sacrifices. In this method, a person will contact an entity or will hire someone that knows how to contact the entities that respond to various sacrifices. Such sacrifices consist of animals, humans, and even loved ones, astaghfirullah. The type of sacrifice depends on what one is trying to seek. When an individual takes this route, they have denounced God from their life and put more faith in an entity than God. They have made a pact with the entity where they will commit a major sin for rewards of this world, and then from there continue to give sacrifices to this entity, as well as worship it. I'm sorry, it is not a one-time deal, but a lifelong deal. Now you may be wondering what these sacrifices give in return. Animal sacrifices. These sacrifices give protection from other magician and entities. Usually successful businessmen seek this route because they are afraid someone may be casting magic on them to ruin them. But it does not mean this person is immune to magical attacks, because if another magician is at a very high level, they can call forth an entity to kill the entity the individual is giving monthly, weekly, or even daily sacrifices to, while worshipping it, and when this happens, all protection for this individual is lost. Human sacrifices. This is done for wealth, luck, and power. Such a contract will last an X amount of time, and before the contract ends, another sacrifices must be given. In the meantime, the entity will want to be worshipped, and at times want weekly or monthly animal sacrifices, and may ask the individual to do awful things. Sacrifice of a loved one. This is done for quick and high levels of wealth, power, and fame. Such sacrifices are said to have a longer contract, which can last 10, 15, and even up to 25 years before another sacrifice of a loved one is expected. In some cases, the entity may or may not want additional monthly sacrifices. It just depends on the entity. One should not be surprised to hear that after sacrificing of a loved one, the entity will want yearly human sacrifices, because it truly depends on the entity, and perhaps where kidnapping of children or even customers of a business whose owners depends on sacrifices to an entity for his business luck establishment take place. When an entity gives you so much, it knows you are now obligated to it, and while it is rare, the entity can break the original contract and start asking for more scarifies. In some cases, it may, and if not done, the entity will ruin the person's life and even make it possible for law enforcement to find out about the killings this individual was a part of. Once such a contract is made, there is no getting out of it. Selling your soul to the devil. Now, as stated in the article I wrote not too long ago, selling your soul to the devil, what does it truly mean? One will understand that when such a contract is made, you don't really give your soul to the devil, but what you have done is damned your soul and put an entity in place of God, where you now worship and seek only this entity for assistance. This can also be done for fame and such things. Magician also may perform this act to get more magical powers. When such a contract is made, one will reach to a specific level of wealth or magical power, but not to a level where they are fully satisfied with, and when this happens, the entity will ask for a human sacrifice, just like mentioned in the above paragraph, for more extreme wealth or magical powers. Offerings. This is a very interesting subject, and quite fascinating. I'll briefly explain why. There are some very rare offerings in our physical world. Rare offerings created by humans that some entities seek with a passion. Some of these offering not only can make the entity stronger, but according to some, younger. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Unfortunately, tricky part is finding such an offering and knowing how to call forth the entity affiliated with that offering. Al-Kiko is a myth, perhaps a legend. Al-Kiko is a fact. It is something that exists and was created by Jewish magic or alchemy. There are various stories about Al-Kiko and how it came about. According to some, it was created by a Jewish woman who later moved to Europe and made this rare perfume for various kings and queens, and that only a few bottles were made before her death. According to others, it is created by powerful Jewish magical practitioner who knows the proper formula and ingredients to make it, and only a very few people had the knowledge on how to create Al-Kiko. If Al-Kiko is found, most likely it is from what was left over from the Jewish woman who created for royalty as stated above, or what was left in the family of the practitioners who made it. Allah knows best. Now there has been some rumors that there are 3 types of Al-Kiko, one being for love, one for bringing down things, and the other for information and knowledge. The one that is considered the rarest is the one that is to bring down things, which means entities brining you what you seek. I have heard of some people having Kiko that is of a clear water-like appearance. I will speak briefly about an experience with Al-Kiko, but I will not speak of who had this experience. I would say perhaps 30 years ago, there was a man who had Al-Kiko, and he was looking for a sheikh that had knowledge on how to work with it, inshallah. After locating a sheikh, a meeting was arranged. When the 2 individuals met, they sat and talked for a few brief minutes. The sheikh, being curious, asked the gentleman how he got the Al-Kiko, but he was very hesitant on telling. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The sheikh even asked the owner of the Al-Kiko if he could see the small bottle it was in, which about 1 milliliter or a bit less, but was told no. It has been said that a person who knows how to call the jinn that works with Al-Kiko can vanish it in thin air by holding the bottle and reciting a few words. Now, before moving forward, the jinn that responds to this offering is a specific type of jinn which is of a darker nature. The owner of the Al-Kiko wanted proof the sheikh did know how to work with the Al-Kiko, and he also wanted to know if the Al-Kiko was real. The sheikh thought for a moment and came up with an idea which I will try to explain. When a practitioner calls forth the jinn of Al-Kiko, it is not only money it can bring, but almost anything you ask. So the sheikh told the man to get a piece of paper and a needle, and to rip the piece of paper in about 20 pieces and scatter it around his home, but keep 1 tiny piece of paper for him. As the man did this, the sheikh prepaid himself. Soon the man came back in the room where the sheikh was seated on the ground, and sat next to him. The sheikh asked him to give him the tiny piece of paper he had asked him to save, and told him to dip this needle, it was a sewing needle, in the Al-Kiko liquid, and smear it across the small piece of paper. Next, the sheikh put the piece of paper with the Kiko in front of him, started reading specific words to contact the jinn. Not too long after, all the pieces of paper the man had scattered around his home started floating in a circle above the piece of paper the Al-Kiko was on. Even with such a small amount of Al-Kiko, an amazing task was experienced. The sheikh looked at the man and smiled and told him it was real. It is said between 1.5 milliliters to 2 milliliters is the amount of Al-Kiko that is needed to have the entity bring down a desirable amount of money. Do understand that money brought forward from such an act is theft, because the money is taken from somewhere or someone. It is extremely rare the entity will give you anything from its own wealth, and one can't ask for this. One can simply ask for money, and if they have a higher amount of al-kiko, 3 milliliters to 5 milliliters, perhaps one can ask the entity to bring gold, diamonds, gemstones, etc. But even then, it can be stolen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Possibly the way around this is to have enough al-kiko where one can ask for gold and gemstone and ask the entity to bring it from a buried treasure source that belongs to no one. But even then, the entity is not obligated to be truthful and can still bring stolen goods. It has been said when one has a decent amount of al-kiko, such a request can be made, but it only applies to gold and gemstones, which can be buried for long periods of time. I cannot confirm this because I have not had this amount of al-kiko, but what I can say is that indeed, al-kiko exists. There are various other offerings to get Jinn to do what one may want, such as luban zaka, which is mostly for heavy love work and information. Another is red mercury, which is said to be old Egyptian magic that was created by a priest thousands of years ago, which then put in the coffins of some of the buried kings, mummies, and queens of Egypt. I cannot confirm anything about red mercury because I have had no real experience with it yet. These are some of the various ways people may utilize entities for fame, success, and power. As you can see, the majority of the ways lead one to commit sins and unforgivable acts. The last method being possible, but extremely rare because finding such an offering is nearly impossible. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.